The first thing my Uber driver said when I opened the door was, "You finally made it." I stopped with one foot inside the car. I had never seen him before. I hadn't told him my name. And the strangest part was that the app hadn't even shown that the driver had arrived yet. I should have walked away. Instead, I got in. And that decision is something I still regret. It was almost midnight when I requested the Uber. I had stayed late at work because I wanted to finish everything before the weekend. By the time I left the building, the parking lot was almost empty. I lived about 20 minutes away. Nothing unusual. I ordered the ride, checked the license plate, and watched the little car icon move toward me. A dark-colored sedan pulled up beside the curb. The license plate matched. The driver matched the photo. A man in his 40s, short hair, glasses, nothing particularly memorable about him. I opened the rear door. That's when he looked at me through the rearview mirror and said it. "You finally made it." I smiled awkwardly. "Sorry?" He laughed. "Nothing. Long night?" I got inside. For the first few minutes, everything felt normal. He followed the navigation. I sat in the back scrolling through my phone. Then he said, "You work late a lot." I looked up. "Sometimes." He nodded. "Your boss still gives you all the work?" I froze. I hadn't mentioned my job. Maybe he was making conversation. Maybe the app showed the location of my pickup and he'd guessed I worked nearby. I ignored it. A few minutes later, he asked, "You still live in the blue house?" I slowly lowered my phone. "What?" He didn't answer. He just kept driving. I looked at the map. We were still going toward my neighborhood. I told myself he had probably confused me with another passenger. Then he said something that made my stomach tighten. "You should probably stop leaving your bedroom window unlocked." I immediately opened the Uber app. My fingers were shaking. I checked the driver's profile. His name was different from the name displayed when I booked the ride. I refreshed the screen. Same thing. Different driver. I leaned forward. "Can you pull over?" He didn't respond. "Please pull over." He finally looked at me through the mirror. "You don't remember me?" "No." His expression changed. Not angry, almost disappointed. "I remember you." The car continued through my neighborhood. I grabbed my phone and opened the emergency call screen. Then I noticed something. The navigation wasn't taking us to my house. It was taking us somewhere else. A completely different street. I said, "You're going the wrong way." "I know." My heart started pounding. I reached for the door handle. Locked. I tried again. Nothing. Then the driver calmly said, "You shouldn't have gotten in." I started recording with my phone. I sent my location to my sister. Then I typed, "Call me. Right now." She called almost immediately. I answered and said loudly, "Hey, I'm almost home." The driver looked at me. I continued talking. "Yeah, I'm in the Uber. The plate is." He suddenly pulled over. "The door's unlocked. Get out." I didn't hesitate. I jumped out and ran toward a brightly lit convenience store. The driver didn't follow. He simply drove away. I stood inside the store, breathing hard, and opened the Uber app. The trip was gone. Not canceled. Gone. There was no receipt, no driver information, no ride history. Nothing. I contacted support. They told me the ride had never been completed through their system. Then I checked my phone. My sister had sent me a message. "Why did you tell me you were almost home? I never called you." I stared at the screen. Then I realized something. The call I thought had been from my sister had lasted almost 2 minutes. But when I checked her phone later, She had never called me. Someone else had, and whoever it was had known exactly where I lived. I never took another ride alone after midnight. But 3 weeks later, something happened that made the entire experience even worse. I received a notification from the Rideshare app. It was asking me to rate my previous driver. The driver's name appeared on the screen. The same man. 5 stars. The trip date was the night I was kidnapped. Or almost kidnapped. But beneath his name was a message. "We hope you enjoyed your ride." I deleted the app that night. I still don't know who that man was. I only know one thing. He wasn't looking for a passenger. He was looking for me. I knew something was wrong when my Uber passed my house. Not my street, not my neighborhood, my actual house. I told the driver to stop. He said, "We're almost there." I looked at the navigation. The destination had changed, and I hadn't changed it. It happened on a rainy Thursday night. I'd gone out for dinner with some friends and ordered an Uber home around 11:30. The driver arrived within 5 minutes. I checked the plate. Everything matched. I got in. He was friendly. He asked how my night was and joked about the weather. Nothing seemed suspicious. About halfway home, I noticed we were approaching my neighborhood. I relaxed. I knew I was only a few minutes away. Then we passed my house. I immediately looked up. That's my street. The driver didn't respond. I checked the app. The destination showed my home address. So I assumed he had missed the turn. "Sorry, you just passed it." He nodded. "It's okay." He kept driving. I waited for him to turn around. He didn't. Instead, we entered another neighborhood. I leaned forward. "Can you turn around?" No answer. "Sir," he finally said. "The app told me to go this way." I looked at his phone. The navigation screen showed a completely different destination, a location outside the city. I pulled out my phone. My own app still showed my home. "Your navigation is wrong." He didn't answer. I started feeling uncomfortable. I told him I wanted to get out. He said, "Not yet." Those 2 words changed everything. I checked the door. It wasn't locked. That made me feel slightly better. I opened the Uber safety menu. I shared the trip with my brother. Then I called him. The driver looked at me. "Who are you calling?" "My brother." He didn't say anything else. My brother answered. I tried to explain what was happening without making the driver realize how scared I was. I said, "I'm going to be home soon." The driver suddenly turned onto a dark road. There were no houses, no stores, no traffic, just trees and rain. My brother asked where I was. I looked at the map. The location kept moving farther away from my house. I told my brother my coordinates. Then I said loudly, "I'm getting out." The driver slammed on the brakes. The car stopped. He turned around. "You don't want to do that." I opened the door. "I'm getting out." He stared at me for several seconds. Then he unlocked everything. I jumped out. The rain was pouring. The road was almost completely empty. I ran toward the direction of the nearest lights. The driver didn't chase me. He simply drove away. My brother stayed on the phone while I walked until I reached a gas station. I called the police and reported the incident. Later, I contacted the rideshare company. They told me something I didn't expect. The driver had accepted my trip normally, but the destination had been modified from his account. They couldn't tell me who changed it. They also told me the driver's account had been suspended. I thought that was the end, until the next morning. I opened my rideshare app. There was a new notification. Your driver has reported an item left in the vehicle. I had never left anything behind. I opened it. The item was listed as black phone charger. I didn't own a black phone charger. Then another notification appeared. Would you like to contact your driver to arrange pickup? I immediately deleted the message. That afternoon, my brother asked me something. Did you ever tell the driver where you lived? No, he looked at me. Then how did he know where to take you? I had no answer. I checked the trip again. The original destination was correct, but there was something I hadn't noticed. The final destination, the one his navigation had taken him toward, was only a few streets away from the address of my childhood home. A house I hadn't lived in for over 10 years. A house that wasn't listed anywhere on my current rideshare profile. I still don't know how that destination appeared, but I know I won't forget the driver's final words. You don't want to do that, because sometimes the most terrifying part of a strange situation isn't what someone does. It's realizing they already know more about you than they should. My Uber driver asked me why I was sitting in the back seat alone. I laughed and told him I was. He looked confused. Then he said, "That's strange. The passenger before you was sitting right there." I thought he was joking until he showed me the photo. There was someone sitting exactly where I was sitting, and I recognized the jacket. It was around 1 a.m. when I ordered an Uber after leaving a friend's apartment. The neighborhood was quiet. I stood outside under a streetlight and watched the car approach. The driver pulled over. I checked the plate. Everything matched. I opened the back door and got inside. The driver looked at me in the mirror. "Hey, hi." He started driving. For the first few minutes, we didn't talk. Then he said, "Long night?" "Yeah." He smiled. "Same." I looked at the dashboard. There was a phone mounted beside the navigation screen. A few seconds later, the driver frowned. He looked at the back seat, then at me. "Can I ask you something?" "Sure." "Were you in the car earlier?" "No." He stared at me through the mirror. "That's weird." "What? I thought you were the same passenger." I laughed nervously. "No, I just got in." He shook his head. "Sorry, forget it." We continued. A few minutes later, he asked, "Are you sure you weren't here before?" "Yes." He seemed uncomfortable. Then he said, "The passenger before you was wearing the same jacket." I looked down at my jacket. It was a plain, dark hoodie. Nothing unusual. I told him plenty of people owned the same kind. He nodded, but he didn't look convinced. Then he showed me something on his phone. It was a photo from his dash camera. The timestamp was less than 10 minutes before I got into the car. The back seat was visible. Someone was sitting exactly where I was sitting. Their face was turned away, but they were wearing my jacket. I immediately felt cold. I asked him where the previous passenger got out. He said, "Here." He pointed at the location where I had just entered. I stared at him. "So they got out before I got in?" "Yes." "Did you see them leave?" He hesitated. "No." That answer made me uncomfortable. I checked the map. We were still heading toward my home. I decided not to panic. Maybe it was just a strange coincidence. Then my phone vibrated. A notification from the Rideshare app appeared. "Your trip has been updated." I opened it. My destination was still correct, but there was a new passenger note. I hadn't written it. It said, "Don't let him take the shortcut." I looked at the driver. "Did you add this?" He immediately said no. I showed him. He pulled over. We sat there in silence. Then his phone received a notification. He looked at it. His face changed. I asked what it was. He didn't answer. He turned the phone toward me. The dash camera had detected movement in the rear seat. The camera timestamp showed it happening seconds earlier, but there was nothing behind me. I slowly looked over my shoulder. The back seat was empty. The driver whispered, "Get out." I didn't argue. We both got out of the vehicle. We stood beside the road while he walked around the car. He opened the rear door. Nothing. Then he checked underneath the seats. Nothing. We got back inside. He said he'd take me home. I almost refused, but we were only 10 minutes away, so I stayed. The entire drive, neither of us spoke. When we arrived at my house, I got out. Before closing the door, I looked at him. "Did you figure out what happened?" He shook his head. "No." I closed the door. I walked toward my house. Then my phone vibrated again. Another rideshare notification. I opened it. It was a rating request. "How was your ride?" Underneath it was the driver's name, and beneath his name was a message. "Your previous trip was canceled." I stared at it. I had never taken a previous trip. I checked my ride history. There it was. A completed trip. Same driver. Same vehicle. Same night. But the pickup location was listed as my home, and the destination was the exact apartment building where my friend lived. The trip had supposedly happened 20 minutes before I ordered the Uber. I called the driver. He didn't answer. I called again. Nothing. Then I received one final notification. "Your driver found an item left in the vehicle." I opened it. The item wasn't a charger. It wasn't a wallet. It wasn't anything I owned. It was listed as dark jacket. I looked down. My jacket was still on me. I checked the rideshare receipt one more time. The previous passenger had given the driver a 5-star rating. The passenger's name was hidden, but the profile picture was visible. It was me. I stopped breathing for a moment. Same face, same jacket, same person, except the photo had been taken from inside the Uber, and behind the version of me in the photograph, there was another person sitting in the back seat. I never found out who they were. I deleted the rideshare app the next morning, and even now, whenever I get into a car at night, I check the back seat before I close the door. Not because I'm afraid someone might be hiding there. I'm afraid that one day I'll look into the empty seat and see myself already sitting there.